The letter arrived on a Tuesday, carried by a raven with eyes that gleamed like polished onyx. Olivia Blake stood frozen in her tiny apartment, the crisp envelope trembling in her hands. She'd never known she had a great-aunt, let alone one wealthy enough to leave her an inheritance. But there it was, in flowing script. The island of Serendipity, in its entirety, to my great-niece, Olivia Blake. Olivia sank into her worn armchair, mind reeling. An island? Her? The 27-year-old bookstore clerk could barely afford her rent, let alone maintain an entire island. She ran a hand through her unruly curls, gaze drifting to the hulking suitcase gathering dust in the corner. It had been years since she'd gone anywhere further than the corner store. "This has to be a mistake," she murmured, but the official-looking documents left no room for doubt. As she read further, her heart began to race. The island was off the coast of Maine, a place she'd always longed to visit. And tucked within the legalese was a note, handwritten in the same elegant script. "My dearest Olivia, though we've never met, I've watched over you all your life. Serendipity Isle holds wonders beyond imagining. Trust your instincts and remember, everything lost wishes to be found. With love, your great-aunt Cordelia." Olivia's fingers traced the words, a shiver running down her spine. She'd always felt different. Like she was meant for something more than the humdrum routine of her daily life. Was this it? That night, sleep eluded her. Olivia tossed and turned, her dreams filled with crashing waves and whispers carried on salty breezes. By dawn, her decision was made. She called the bookstore, voice quavering as she requested time off. As Maine's rugged coastline came into view, Olivia's apprehension gave way to a growing sense of excitement. The salty air whipped her hair, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. "There she is!" the grizzled ferry captain grunted, gesturing to a smudge on the horizon. "Serendipity Isle. Folks around here say it's haunted." Olivia's eyes widened as the island took shape. Mist clung to its rocky shores, and at its heart rose a tangle of lush forest. No signs of habitation were visible, save for a crumbling lighthouse perched precariously on a cliff. "Haunted?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The captain shrugged. "Strange lights, they say. Objects appearing where they shouldn't be. Your aunt was the only one who lived there full-time, and she was eccentric." As they drew closer, Olivia could have sworn she saw flashes of colour amid the green, unnatural hues that had no place in nature. Her heart pounded as the ferry bumped against a weathered dock. "Last chance to turn back," the captain warned, but Olivia was already shouldering her backpack. "No," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "This is where I'm meant to be." The moment her feet touched the dock, a jolt ran through her body. The air hummed with an energy she couldn't explain. As Olivia made her way up a winding path, the island seemed to come alive around her. Flowers turned to follow her progress, their petals shimmering with impossible iridescence. A brook babbled nearby, its waters glinting with what looked like gold coins from a dozen different eras. "Hello?" Olivia called out, her voice swallowed by the dense foliage. "Is anyone here?" Only the rustle of leaves answered her. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she pushed through a curtain of vines, Olivia gasped. Before her stood a grand Victorian mansion, its gingerbread trim and towering turrets a stark contrast to the wild beauty of the island. "Welcome home," she whispered to herself, mounting the steps. The front door swung open at her touch, as if the house itself had been waiting for her. Olivia stepped into a cavernous foyer, her eyes struggling to adjust to the dimness. Dust motes danced in shafts of coloured light from stained glass windows. But it was the objects filling every surface that drew her attention. Shelves groaned under the weight of artefacts from every corner of the globe and every era of history. A Roman gladiator's helmet sat next to a 1950s toaster. An ancient Egyptian ankh leaned against what appeared to be a piece of the Berlin Wall. And was that Amelia Earhart's flight goggles? Impossible, Olivia breathed, reaching out to touch a gleaming pocket watch. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the watch sprang to life. Gears whirred, and spectral images danced above its face, snippets of the life of the man who'd once owned it. Olivia yanked her hand back with a yelp. The watch fell silent, but now the air around her was alive with whispers. Each object seemed to call out, begging to share its story. "Oh, Aunt Cordelia," she murmured, "what have you gotten me into?" As if in answer, a gust of wind swept through the mansion. It swirled around Olivia, carrying the scent of old books and sea salt. Pages fluttered on a nearby desk, settling to reveal a leather-bound journal. Olivia approached cautiously, somehow knowing this was meant for her. The journal, she found her aunt's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then the island has chosen you as its new collector. The task before you is great, but so too is the wonder. Every lost thing in this world finds its way here, drawn by a magic as old as time itself. It's our duty to keep them safe, to learn their stories and, when the time is right, to help them find their way home. The path ahead won't be easy, but I know you have the heart for it. Trust in yourself and in the magic of Serendipity Isle. All my love, Cordelia." Olivia clutched the journal to her chest, equal parts thrilled and terrified. She was no one special, just a girl who'd never quite fit in. How could she possibly be worthy of such a task? A gentle chime walked through her spiraling thoughts. Olivia turned to see an old music box perched on a nearby table, its lid slowly opening of its own accord. A haunting melody filled the air, and as Olivia listened, she felt a calm settle over her. This was why she'd always felt different. This was where she belonged. With new determination, Olivia straightened her shoulders and looked out over the room full of lost treasures. "All right," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Let's see what stories you have to tell." As days turned to weeks, Olivia fell into the rhythm of island life. She explored every nook and cranny of the mansion, cataloguing its wonders in a system of her own devising. Each object held a piece of history, a fragment of someone's life. By touching them, Olivia could glimpse flashes of their past: joy, sorrow, triumph, and loss. But it wasn't until the storm that she truly understood the magnitude of her new role. Olivia stood on the Widow's Walk, watching as roiling clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind whipped her hair into a frenzy, carrying with it the tang of ozone and possibility. As the first raindrops fell, she noticed something strange in the churning waves below. Hundreds of objects bobbed in the water, carried by currents that defied the laws of nature. Olivia watched in awe as they were swept onto the shore: a child's teddy bear, a soldier's dog tags, a locket that still held a century-old photograph. "The tide of lost things," she whispered, remembering a passage from Aunt Cordelia's journal. Racing down to the beach, Olivia began gathering the new arrivals. Each one hummed with its own energy, its own story waiting to be told. As she worked, a flicker of movement caught her eye. There, half buried in the sand, was a tarnished oil lamp. Olivia's hand hovered over it, hesitant. This one felt different, powerful in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. As her fingers brushed its surface, a jolt of electricity shot through her body. Visions flashed before her eyes: desert sands, hidden caves, and wishes with terrible consequences. "No," Olivia gasped, snatching her hand away. "Some things are meant to stay lost." But even as she turned away, she could feel the lamp's pull. The temptation to keep it, to use its power, was almost overwhelming. For the first time, Olivia understood the true weight of her responsibility as the collector. It wasn't just about preserving history or solving mysteries. It was about protecting the world from forces it wasn't ready to handle. With trembling hands, she picked up the lamp, wrapping it carefully in the scarf. "I'll keep you safe," she promised, both to the lamp and to herself. "Until it's time for you to be found again." Olivia made her way back to the mansion. New treasures cradled in her arms, she felt a shift in the air. The island itself seemed to approve the path before her, lit by bioluminescent flowers that hadn't been there moments before. She may not have chosen this destiny, but standing there, surrounded by the magic of Serendipity Isle, Olivia knew she wouldn't have it any other way. The lost things of the world had found their guardian, and she was finally home. As weeks turned into months, Olivia settled into her role as the island's collector with growing confidence. The mansion, once a labyrinth of dusty corridors and cluttered rooms, now hummed with purpose. She'd organised the lost objects into themed galleries, each one a window into a different era or aspect of human experience. But for all her newfound certainty, one room remained a mystery. At the very top of the mansion's highest tower, a door stood resolutely locked. No key she'd found would open it, and even her gentlest touches to its weathered wood sent uncomfortable shivers down her spine. It was on a moonless night, as Olivia pored over her great-aunt's journals by candlelight, that she found her first clue. "The heart of serendipity beats behind the final door," Cordelia had written. "Only one who truly understands the weight of memory may enter." Olivia's brow furrowed as she traced the cryptic words. "The weight of memory," she murmured. Her gaze drifted to the objects surrounding her: a chipped teacup, a tarnished locket, a child's worn stuffed animal. Each one carried the imprint of lives lived, loves lost, moments that shaped the very fabric of human experience. With sudden clarity, Olivia understood. She gathered an armful of small objects, each one thrumming with emotional resonance, and made her way to the tower. Standing before the stubborn door, Olivia took a deep breath. "I am the collector," she said, her voice steady. "Guardian of the lost and forgotten. I carry the weight of 1,000 memories." She spoke, she pressed her palm to the door, the objects cradled in her other arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a long-held sigh, the door swung open. Olivia gasped as she stepped into a circular room bathed in soft, pulsing light. At its centre stood a pedestal, and upon it, a gently rotating globe that seemed to be made of pure starlight. "The heart of serendipity," she breathed. As Olivia approached, images flickered across the globe's surface, snippets of lives from across time and space. She saw laughter and tears, triumphs and tragedies, all the moments that made up the tapestry of human existence. A wave of understanding washed over her. This was the source of the island's magic, the beacon that called lost things home. And now it called to her. With trembling fingers, Olivia reached out to touch the globe. The moment her skin made contact, her mind exploded with visions. She saw the island as it had been throughout history, a sanctuary for objects and stories that might otherwise have been lost to time. She saw her ancestors, generations of collectors who had served as its guardians. And she saw something else. A darkness gathering on the horizon, a force that sought to twist the island's power for its own ends. Olivia pulled her hand away, gasping. The weight of her responsibility settled over her like a mantle. She wasn't just a caretaker of curiosities. She was the protector of memory itself. As dawn broke over Serendipity Isle, Olivia stood on the Widow's Walk, her great-aunt's journal clutched to her chest. The revelations of the night before swirled in her mind, equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. A glint on the horizon caught her eye. Raising a pair of antique binoculars, she focused on a sleek yacht cutting through the waves. Even at this distance, she could make out a figure on the deck, a man in an impeccable suit, his silver hair gleaming in the morning sun. Dread pooled in Olivia's stomach. Somehow she knew this was the threat she'd glimpsed in her vision. "Silas Flint," she murmured, the name rising unbidden to her lips. A collector of a very different sort, one who saw the magic of lost things as a source of power to be exploited. As the yacht drew closer, Olivia's resolve hardened. She might not have chosen this path, but she was a Blake. The island had called to her for a reason. "Well then, Mr. Flint," she said, a hint of steel in her voice. "Let's see what you're made of." Olivia turned on her heel, heading back into the mansion with purposeful strides. She had preparations to make. The next chapter of Serendipity Isle's story was about to unfold, and she intended to make sure it had a happy ending. In the following days, Olivia threw herself into fortifying the island's defences. She pored over Cordelia's journals, learning incantations to strengthen the magical barriers that kept Serendipity hidden from prying eyes. Objects of power were carefully relocated to secure vaults deep within the mansion's foundations. But even as she worked, Olivia couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The lost things around her seemed restless, their whispers more urgent than ever before. It was the music box that finally gave her the warning she needed. As Olivia wound its delicate key, instead of its usual melody, a voice emerged, crackly and distant, but unmistakably human. "The collector's heart holds the key," it said. "Beware the man who would steal time itself." Olivia's blood ran cold. She remembered the globe in the tower room, how it had shown her the ebb and flow of human experience. If Silas Flint got his hands on that... A sharp rap at the front door made her jump. Taking a deep breath, Olivia smoothed her hair and straightened her shoulders. It was time to face her adversary. She opened the door to find Silas Flint on her doorstep, every bit as polished and predatory as she'd imagined. His smile never reached his eyes as he extended a manicured hand. "Miss Blake, I presume? I must say you're not at all what I expected." Olivia met his gaze steadily, not taking his hand. "And what exactly did you expect, Mr. Flint?" He chuckled, letting his hand fall. "Oh, someone a bit more seasoned, perhaps. Your great-aunt was a formidable woman." "I'll take that as a compliment," Olivia said coolly. "Now, what can I do for you?" Flint's eyes glittered with barely concealed avarice as he glanced past her into the mansion's treasure-filled interior. "I have a proposition for you, my dear. One that could make us both very wealthy indeed." Olivia's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I'm listening." As Flint launched into his pitch, a scheme to share the island's wonders with the world for a price, Olivia felt a familiar warmth against her hip. The pocket watch she'd first touched upon arriving was vibrating gently, as if warning her. She knew then that she couldn't simply turn Flint away. He was too dangerous, too determined. She needed to understand the full scope of what she was up against. "Why don't you come in, Mr. Flint?" Olivia said, forcing a smile. "I think this calls for a proper tour." As she led him through the galleries, Olivia's mind raced. Every object they passed seemed to whisper warnings, urging her to protect them. But it wasn't until they reached the base of the tower that she saw Flint's true colours. His gaze locked onto the stairs leading up, a hunger in his eyes that made Olivia's skin crawl. And what's up there, I wonder? Nothing of interest, Olivia said quickly. Too quickly. Flint's smile turned predatory. Oh, I very much doubt that, Miss Blake. You see, I've done my research. I know all about the heart of serendipity. In that moment, Olivia realized the true danger she faced. This wasn't just about protecting objects. It was about safeguarding the very essence of human memory and experience. As Flint took a menacing step forward, years of lost objects whispered their secrets to Olivia. She felt their power flow through her, a tide of history and emotion that threatened to overwhelm her senses. But in that maelstrom she found strength. She was the collector, the guardian chosen by Serendipity Isle itself. And she would not let it fall. I'm afraid you've overstayed your welcome, Mr. Flint, Olivia said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. She raised her hand, and the very air around them seemed to ripple. Flint's eyes widened in shock as he found himself rooted to the spot, unable to move. What are you doing? Olivia approached him, power crackling at her fingertips. Protecting what's mine. What's ours. The stories and memories of countless lives, too precious to be exploited. With a gesture, she summoned the magic of the island. Lost objects flew from their places, swirling around Flint in a dizzying vortex. He cried out as each one shared a fragment of its history, joy and pain, love and loss, the full spectrum of human experience. This is the true power of Serendipity Isle, Olivia said, her voice barely audible above the whirlwind. Not something to be bought or sold, but to be honoured and protected. As suddenly as it began, the storm of objects subsided. Flint collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The weight of 1,000 memories had humbled him in a way Olivia never could have managed alone. Go, she said softly, and know that you'll never find this place again. As Flint stumbled out, Olivia felt the island's magic settle around her like a warm embrace. She had faced her first true test as the collector and emerged victorious. Looking out over the galleries of lost things, Olivia smiled. There were more adventures to come, more stories to uncover. But for now, she was exactly where she needed to be, home on an island where everything lost wished to be found.